It's deja vu, isn't it? I feel like we were here just a week ago, but we welcome you back to the Belle Grand Prix circuit, located in Detroit, Michigan, in the United States of America. And it hosts the 7th round of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019, with all coverage today on your beloved RaceSpotTV. Around the 3.7 kilometer, 2.3 mile clockwise layout of Belle Isle. The weather conditions you just saw on screen there, it's a little quicker than it was last week, so our lap times should drop by just a touch, and that should provide a bit more grip for these drivers around the challenging bumpy streets of Detroit itself. 14 turns, 5 of those to the left, 9 to the right, 18 laps of action yet again this week, of course, as well. Minimal elevation change around this circuit. Top speeds of up to 215 kilometers an hour. Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Simon on hand in the commentary booth alongside Randy Cheneth once again this week. And Randy, that's beautiful for these drivers because last week we had a race of attrition, but with the colder weather conditions this week, the extra grip should make the challenge just that slight bit easier.
Yeah, you're right. With the slightly cooler weather conditions, things should be a little bit easier on the tires for all these guys. That should make everything, especially when it comes to rear grip, a lot more, let's say, simple and straightforward, as qualifying is currently what we have underway at the moment. So we'll take a look at your current quick lap time to Ollie Peacock, who finds his way at the head of the field right this moment. But a couple other quick names as well cycle towards the top of the timing sequence.
And we're watching the number 11 of Daniel Fletcher, who was on pole last week. He's gone off the track. That's his qualifying session over, and he'll only start no greater than the second row this week round. So, Randy, Daniel Fletcher has actually gone slower in quicker weather. He just doesn't seem as dialed in this week. Maybe he needed to put in another 120 practice laps like he did before the race last time.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit, but I'm sure there maybe is a little bit of frustration coming in with some guys as well. Maybe some people not liking the back-to-back race weeks, especially if you were struggling here a week ago. This is going to be a very frustrating sort of segment of the league and of the championship for you, isn't it? You go from potentially a bad race last week or a track that you struggle on into this week, and it's like, oh great, deja vu, a track that I had a very bad race on. Instead of getting like a season to sort of get in the back of your head, I had 7 days, and for some people that may not quite be enough. As it's still currently Ollie Peacock by just a couple of hundredths at the top of your timing screens. A couple drivers who have yet to put in laps, but I don't think they're going to based on that. So I think we're mostly done with qualifying it right this moment.
Yeah, I know Anthony Rice, who is, well, he's not at the bottom of the timetables. That's Steve Kebe, but Anthony Rice is, where is he now? Through the middle part of the lap. He might not get this lap in. Oh, is that where he corrected us on?
Yeah. So yeah, a little confusing pronunciation there. Scott Kirchner currently out there on track, currently 10th quickest. He's on his last hot lap though. See if he can maybe improve from the 26.7. Currently 10th of 11. You got about a second and a half. He's got to reel in though to that double eight of Carl Crowley.
So Rice now through the end of the lap. This should count for a lap time. Let's see where it puts him. No off track so far, and he the lap hasn't been on the limit here. We're watching Scott Kirchner, of course, on screen, but Rice and Kirchner are on similar parts of the racetrack. Here's Kirchner first, though, to cross the line. Currently 10th, and
doesn't improve.
At all.
He went quicker, but he didn't actually move up any positions.
And Anthony Rice sets a 1 minute 30.262. That's a very slow lap time for Anthony Rice, but he gets one on the board and jumps ahead of Kurt Van Wagenen, who we're not sure if he'll take the start at the moment, Kurt, but that looks like 12 cars out there on the racetrack, Randy, and it looks like qualifying is all done and dusted.
Yep, qualifying pretty much wrapped up, and in just a couple moments, Mr. Jonathan Simone will take you down our starting grid.
Ollie Peacock on pole position, a 1 minute 23.5, closely challenged by Pro Mazda veteran Martin Arnold is there on the front row. Putekilis and Fletcher head the second row of the grid. What can Fletcher produce from that second row? Can he make up for last week's demise from pole position. Last week's winner, Harley Lewis, in the 5th position. And look who's next to him, Fabio Berchol. That could play up to be a good rivalry around Belle Isle here today. Down the order, Pete Tinkler and Nguyen in 7th and 8th. And it's Crowley, Kirshner, Hubei, Rice, and Wagenen rounding out your 13-car field here at Detroit. So once again, Randy, we're about to begin this race. The challenge through the first couple of corners at the start isn't that big of a deal. It's the bump on the exit, though, of turn 2, and then the run coming out all the way through that long straight where you can make some early overtakes and pick off a few drivers.
Yeah, 100%. That's really the big kind of trouble points, isn't it? It's just going through turn 2. Of course, it can be a bit of a rough run in towards turn 1. You need to sort of get yourself single filed out. And of course, as you go through 1 and 2 for the first time, bringing you onto Central Avenue, that sort of second straightaway going in towards turn 3, really the primary outbraking opportunity and passing opportunity. It's very quick. It's almost very Rouge-like in some ways, isn't it, Johnny? Where you sort of start the race and you immediately have this fast corner that you want to get yourself single filed out. Of course, Eau Rouge and Radion doesn't have a crazy bump at the exit, and there's not a wall immediately right there. But regardless, your field getting ready to roll off.
Drivers just revving their engines. Wait for the pace car to pull off. There it is. So Belle Isle, we know it is a very tight street circuit. IndyCar races here quite a few times throughout the years, of course, as well. And we've hosted Detroit Grand Prix, of course, for them. A couple of other racing series out here, of course, over the years, but IndyCar most notable. For the Pro Masters, they go green, and they begin 18 laps of action yet again this week round.
Looking like a good clean start. You see that 666 of Oldest Buchkelis. Good start from him. Immediately gets around Martin on Oldest for second. The 11 of Daniel Fletcher, who was quick last week. He's working the inside of that 4 of last week's winner, Harley Lewis. They work down this sort of second straightaway in towards turn 3. And Fletcher trying to find a way around that 4-car Lewis, but not going to have anything to do with that just yet as they work now in through the infield section for the first time.
So the only position changes I see at the moment, Particulars up in the 2nd, Fletcher down 1 position as Lewis climbs into the top 4 this time round. So Fletcher's got his work cut out for him as they head to Strand Drive for the first time. We ride on board from the rear end here of your leader. And no, that's not your leader, excuse me. That is Aldous. No, that's Martin on Aldous in the 3rd position. So there's your leader on screen there. That's Ollie Peacock, who set a scruffy lap time for pole position, but it was quick enough for pole. And now he heads away leading on the first lap. Just what you need here at Belle Isle.
Yeah, it is exactly what you need if you're Ollie Peacock, isn't it? He's got himself a nice clean start and a couple of early gaps here, but he's got really the driver that's been the driver of the championship thus far that's going to be hunting him down. That 666 car of Ulrich Butekelis didn't have quite the race he would have wanted last week. I think he potentially had a chance for the win, but right now, 2nd place is at risk as Martin Arnoldus had a run going into turn 1, but that is a difficult part of the racetrack to make passes at, and you see that 83 car fall off the back just a little bit.
And Fletcher's out of the race. Daniel Fletcher's had issues 2 weeks in a row, 2 DNFs. Fletcher, oh, and that car looks damaged, doesn't it, Randy, on screen? There's no front wing on that Pro Mazda. So certainly something's gone wrong here. We look at a replay of a very static pace car. Here we go. Here's Daniel Fletcher. Let's watch what happens and see if he...
Yeah, we'll have to take a peek. I've just sort of rewound the cameras back about a minute and a half. So, of course, the first half of that, we got to look at the pace car on pit road, and he was still sitting there. So it would have happened here, I think, relatively early in this infield section. This right-hander can be treacherous. He didn't make the classic mistake of pushing out into the wall there, so I'm curious where this mistake may have come from. Anything working through here? Oh, he's a little bit loose going into that left-hander, isn't he? I think he may have snatched the rear tire on the brakes, and I think that was pretty much all she wrote. We'll get an onboard view of it from the 11 car.
So riding on board with Fletcher now, and cold tires, first lap, a lot of bumps, never going to end. He just hasn't been comfortable, you know. He's put in a lot of practice laps yet again this week, and he just can't find that consistency. That car's done and dusted.
Well, he's
Fletcher,
back out after getting a... He is back out after... Oh, no!
Putekelis, his engine's gone.
What's
All
happened
this
here?
ridiculous. So he's keeping that car running. Oh, he's blown it on the exit there. Has he shifted?
I think it was already. I think the motor was already gone when we were looking at that camera angle. We'll see if something happens in towards here. Whether it's an over rev situation or does he just downshift too quickly? Do these cars not have road protection?
Well, it doesn't look like it in that situation. Look at the cars trying to just maneuver their way around that stricken Pro Mazda of all this particulars. Two of your front runners out of this event early. Here we ride on board with all this. He's revved it too hard, I think. Sounds like it.
I think you're right. He was really all over the rev limiter going into turn 3. I almost think he may have had the gearing just a little bit short, but regardless, that car's been on pit road and I think taking the fast repair and gotten his way back out on track. But man, honestly, I think that's the first time I've seen that in these Pro Mazdas, see a motor go down that quickly. I don't think I've ever seen a motor pop quite like that.
That's the pressure that piles on when you're fighting for first position. Do anything to win and you'll go beyond the limit, which is motor racing will always penalize you that. And that's the beauty of this sport, Randy. That's why I love motor racing, because you watch like a basketball, you have a turnover, you just go back and play defense. You play football, throw an interception, you know, your defense still has a chance to stop the other team from getting a touchdown. But in racing, your race is over, especially at the street circuit. A turnover is game over.
Well, I will say I was a little scared you were going to start talking about Aussie rules football, in which case no one from your country would know what you were talking about. But no, I mean, you are right. You can have some mild stuff that you can almost sort of see it in that way, but yeah, any little mistake or any big mistake can potentially turn catastrophic, and it's especially around a place like this. We've had 2 early incidents from cars that we know likely have some good pace. One of which is sort of the classic street circuit sort of incident of just get a little bit loose and get thrown into the wall at an inopportune point of the racetrack right here, actually where we're looking at the 83 of Martin Arnoldus. And the other incident, just sort of a weird one that I think you and I have never really seen in this car before.
Well, I haven't seen it I think I saw one a year ago, but I can't remember which racetrack. Maybe it was Motorsport, but it was a very weird, very rare to happen. You don't see it every now and then.
Well, especially this early in the race. So, you might expect to see that in a couple of big draft tracks, like maybe at a Monza or a Daytona late in the race, whether you're going to spend a lot of time in the slipstream. Because of that, you'll struggle to get clean air into the car. I've seen that happen with Skip Barber in the past on the sim on a lot of the draft tracks, because of course those cars are so relatively low on power. They just spend all sorts of time in the slipstream, and tracks like Brands Hatch and those cars suddenly turn into a slipstream circuit. I've seen that happen there, but that's always super late in the races, never in the first opening few laps. So really, really odd. And I have to say, I think he's probably just downshifted and grabbed a gear a little bit too quickly. Is about the only thing that I think really makes sense there.
So there we see Martin Arnoldus, Pro Mazda veteran on screen, and the number 83 TNT racing car. And who's this? Kyle Crowley in the 5th position. I think he's gotten past Nyok Khan Yuen.
Yeah, the 12's lost a couple spots, actually.
So I just thought about this the other second as I saw the cars traversing through turn 2. They're handling that bump there on the exit a lot better than they were last week.
Yeah, they are a little bit. Actually, that 12 car in Yuen, he's got a little bit of damage on that left front end plate. And I'll say that car doesn't look good at all. I think he's got suspension damage. So we'll rewind the cameras back here and see if we can spot him. Oh, well, that was perfect, wasn't it? Rewind it back just a little bit further. But I think, Johnny, you sort of inadvertently gave him the replay commentator's curse here. I think he comes through turn 2 here, and I think he catches that exact bump. I was just about to mention it as well. That is exactly what happened. So he's obviously broke the suspension on that car. Nicely clipping through the wall as well. But he should be able to come down pit road and get that repaired. But I think you're right. We are seeing the cars, generally speaking, handle that wall a little bit better. Handle that bump a little bit better than we did last week out. And I think it just has to do with the temperatures. It's easy to see that you have shadows all around the racetrack. The track conditions relatively cool at just 81 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. That's really, really cold. And, you mentioned the fact that that's going to bring up the lap times, Johnny, that's just as well going to increase overall grip. It'll make the first couple laps a little bit sketchy when you're on cold tires. Remember what we saw from that 11 car, Daniel Fletcher, on the opening lap. But once you get some heat in them, it's basically just going to be like the greatest racing conditions you would ever hope for to put down some absolutely rapid lap times.
You get a lot of world records broken in overcast conditions. Not overcast today. You look at the skies, partly cloudy. So we ride on board now with our Norders. Let's have a listen to him as he works the final sector. And there's that aggressive bump on the exit. His car just, it wasn't even a bump. Suspension just handling it quite well there.
Yeah, he like I said, it seems the cars in general are all just handling the bump much better. And of course, for a lot of these guys, Johnny, you know, of course, there's an extra week sort of maybe of development time. You know, a lot of these guys, they aren't the world-class sim racers we see in some of the other series that we do here on RaceSpotTV. You know, compare that to, say, the Porsche Esports Super Cup that happened a little bit early on. So for a lot of these guys, they're sort of the sim racing equivalent of sort of gentleman drivers, and maybe that extra week, maybe they were able to find a little bit of something in the setup. So right on board for this full lap with Arnoldus, by the way, just to sort of see how he deals with it. I also want to listen to the way he sort of modulates the throttle going through turn 2, because that was actually quite interesting. But the extra week may have actually done quite well for everybody in, you know, potentially not only just learning the track and getting around the track a bit better, but probably helping with some setup stuff as well. I'm sure some people, as bumpy this place is, messing with springs, messing with shocks, a lot of that definitely can really improve the handling of the car around this place, because it is mighty bumpy. And as good as it looked through the second corner last time through, it did not look very calm through that last sequence of corners. But the way he modulates the throttle here through turn 2 is just, there's not many corners that I'm aware of that you sort of have to modulate like that.
You just heard him. And I mean, it's driver skill too, because I think about Road Atlanta, where once you exit that turn 3 right-hander after the uphill section, and if you touch the exit curb, which is bad, you're going to be slow there, but you can just modulate the throttle a little bit and you won't spin out or lose much time. And it feels like the same here over that death bump at Belle Isle. If you do the same, you just, you know, keep the rear end a little bit more in the air. You're not keeping it as planted to the ground as you would if you floored the throttle, you know, rear engine car. So it just seems to help Martin Arnoldus. Not sure if you have anything else to say on that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, you are right. I mean, if you're someone like myself who has a tendency to just, it's actually a little bit wide there with Ollie Peacock, I think, going into that sector, and very close to the wall as well. So I think Martin Arnoldus maybe getting probably a few tenths there opened up. Either that or the 23 car was absolutely rapid through there the way he went through, because Ollie is definitely sending it as he sent it through there. But you are right. I mean, you know, some cars can have tons of rear grip, but these little sort of feeder formula cars are always a bit on edge and a bit nosy, aren't they? They kind of feel like there's a bunch of aero always pinned down on the front of the car, and especially the way you set them up. A lot of times people will crank a bunch of downforce into them, and you know, that sector you talk about at turn 3, very, very it's a good one to sort of point out as sort of a difficult one at, well, turn 3 and into turn 4, because that's actually a very similar kind of corner sequence where good suspension setup is absolutely critical, because you kind of want to be able to hop that first curb at turn 3 as you kind of fall into the, it's Peacock's in the wall. The race leader's in the wall.
Ollie Peacock's race is over. Led every lap so far, and I was just about to call the order here halfway through the event. But the Brit has ended his chances here through the first sector. Let's watch him on board, and let's see what happened to Ollie Peacock.
Well, let's do the right-hander we have coming up. We know the left-hander's clean. Did he catch a bump? We just talked about having the suspension set up. He just got the turn-in point wrong, didn't he? We'll take another look at that on board. I think he just turns in for that corner a little bit too early, Johnny, getting ready to bring himself onto the back straightaway at turn 6. And he just clips the right front there as he turns onto Strand Drive. It really is the classic sort of street course incident. We've seen that in all sorts of open wheel motorsports over the years on the street races. places like Monaco, places like Singapore. And he just gets it wrong by about 6 inches, and, well, that destroys the right front and throws him into that pure Michigan branding on the left-hand side.
He's missed the apex to the inside of the corner, and that allows Martin Arnoldus to lead this race all alone. There he is on screen, the veteran, leading this race untouched. But, I mean, that's turn 6 where Ollie Peacock made the mistake. His car is done and dusted. I don't think we'll see him getting out there unless that team can get that repaired quickly soon. But my goodness, we'll run through the order of the field. It's cycling through the top end of the screen regardless. But for Ollie Peacock, he was driving so well until that error, you know. It's just, it reminds me a lot of Charles Leclerc this year at Baku in Azerbaijan in qualifying. Just butchered what should have been a race win if he'd started from pole position. And he's made the similar mistake.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that one. The Leclerc comparison, I think, is quite apt. And actually, we might be in for more of that drama because, of course, Montreal this weekend for the Formula One World Championship. So qualifying, I believe, coming sometime today. Is actually that happened already, Johnny? It's a North American.
I don't want to spoil the results.
Fair enough.
I was supposed to avoid the results waking up this morning at 5:30, an hour ago, whatever, but I accidentally scrolled through my...
Oh, he saved it!
Martin Arnoldus! Oh, what's happening? Here he is through the final sector. And where does he get this wrong?
It's turn 2. I think he catches the bump. We've seen it now twice now. We sort of have forgotten about the bump, and I almost wonder if drivers are sort of the same way. Just maybe, oh, it feels a lot cleaner than it did last week, a lot easier to take, and just getting a little bit wrong. And man, that was well held. Maybe a little bit of 2-foot smash coming into play there, but that was well held by Martin Arnoldus. But look who that is going to start reeling in and bringing into the picture. Number 4 of Harley Lewis, suddenly not very far off the back of your current race leader, Martin Arnoldus. So could hardly be in for a nice little cheeky 2 in a row.
And we've just heard news. Scott Kirshner's hit the wall in the final sector and his suspension's broken. So he's in the pit lane receiving service. But, and is that Scott Kirshner on screen? Yeah, it is. Yeah. The 00. So that's the 00 car of Scott Kirshner. He's through the middle sector now. So it's going to happen around, it has to happen probably at the next corner, Randy, I'd assume, because I mean, that's a tough one, that next right-hander, but he seems to have hit the wall. Suspension's broken.
Yep, right
there it is. Just as we predicted, and that steering's bent. Game over for Scott Kirshner.
That's actually very similar to what we had happen to Felix Rosenqvist this season in IndyCar, but he had it happen coming out of turn 11, I believe it was. Just going through this right-hander, clipped the left front, came onto the front straightaway. And for Scott Kirshner, he's able to sort of get it slowed down and get it to the pit road. When it happened to Felix, he basically went into turn 1 after queuing up the radio and said, I've broken the car, and then he broke the car even more going into turn 1. So Felix, who's had a bit of a rocky start to his IndyCar career, has good pace, but he's found the wall quite often, and unfortunately is running for a not particularly patient Chip Ganassi. So regardless, we were talking earlier on, Johnny, about how the track was seemingly, a lot easier for these guys this week. We've not seen the levels of attrition we saw 7 days ago, but suddenly we get 2/3 of the way through this event, and people are starting to drop like flies. That, I think, 3 cars in about 2 laps?
Yeah, we still have 13 cars out there, or 12 cars out there on the racetrack. Ollie Peacock's still in the pits, but Fletcher's out in the way after his accident. Repairs made. Kirshner into the pits with some repairs made, but then again, this track isn't friendly, and the lead battle. So let's run through your order finally with 6 laps to go. It is Martin Arnoldus leading the event. He's just crossed the start-finish line, as you can see. Let's have a... I'm getting nervous here calling this order as he heads through turn 2. And there are the movers and shakers throughout your screen on the left. So Lewis in second, your winner from last week. Fabio Berchtold in the 3rd position. We know Fabio had a chance at winning this event 7 days ago. Carl Crowley having a very underrated event in the 4th position, along with Steve Cube in the 5th position. Aldous Particulars in 6th. And Tinkler, Not Kan Yuen in the 7th position. Arnoldus here, he's having a bit of trouble with the leader, I'm pretty sure, off camera.
Oh, you're right.
He can't, I think he's had some damage too. Cannot get past the lap car of Anthony Rice. I think Arnoldus will be quite livid with that, to be honest with you. Harley Lewis is all over the rear end now, your leader.
We'll get a look on board to see what happened. You see the AMSOIL car out in front of him, just sort of an awkward point of the racetrack to catch him, and maybe not facilitating the pass. And you're right, he found that wall on the left-hand side, and then it's the 64 of Anthony Rice. Kind of took a tight exit there coming onto the back straightaway, and Arnoldus got into him again. We'll rewind the cameras one more time to sort of show this. And it's just sort of the awkward street course dealing with lap traffic situation, isn't it, Johnny? It's sort of, you know, it's a tight sector. Maybe Anthony should have helped facilitate that just a little bit, but you're always going to have these sort of miscommunications in this part of the racetrack.
I just, you know, being a guy who's raced in world championships in sim racing, I've never been a fan of lap drivers. I think, to be honest with you, if you're a lap driver, and I've been in blue flag situations myself, you just have to get off the racing line completely. Like, don't, I know some people, and this is difference of philosophy, some people say, you know, the leader has to, you know, be patient around them. If you're not in the race, you should just pull off the racing line completely and allow everybody through and just race in clean air yourself. I just think Arnoldus was in a tough situation there, you know, and hopefully he doesn't have damage here that's going to cost him the win, but it definitely looks like it. Lewis is, he just looks quicker at this stage. He's not even in the draft most of the time, and he just seems to be reeling in Martin in front.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. It's been a couple laps now since that incident happened, so I don't think the top speed advantage is too huge. There may be a little bit in it in favor of Harley Lewis, but I think if it was clear cut, I think he would have driven around him at the moment. It could very well just be a mental thing, Johnny, if you're Martin Arnoldus. You know, you're leading the race, you have second place who's chasing you down, and then you have that incident with a lap car. You're going to be on edge, and you may not drive your full pace, but let's see what happens as Harley Lewis has a run into one.
Oh, that's a good peak. Forced Arnoldus offline, but Lewis butchers the exit. Not going to get a good run here on Central Avenue for the first time. Heading down towards turn 3. The beautiful Central Avenue into the braking zone. Arnoldus very deep and onto the grass, but Lewis doesn't get the best of exits either. These two could be in a bit of a scrap here for the lead with just a few laps remaining.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's what's sort of at play here. I think Lewis is sort of surprised he's suddenly chasing down Arnoldus here and suddenly in it for the race win, and I think maybe a little overexcited, and I think Martin is finally starting to get calmed down just a little bit, and he's starting to manage that gap better from what we saw those first couple of laps. So maybe taking the edge off in these closing moments, and there's going to be 3 to go when they get to the line.
Through the middle sector they go. Lewis is on edge. Arnoldus under pressure, but who will end out this race on top? Will it be Lewis 2 out of 2 yet again, or will the veteran show his experience with what is possibly a damaged car for sure? He definitely touched the wall, and he gets very close there on the exit. Look how far these two are pushing, widening the racetrack, pushing to the limits. Across the line they go. There'll be only a few remaining.
So let's see, through 1 and 2, we've seen Arnoldus have issues here. We've not seen Harley Lewis struggle through that turn 2 sector, and both of them get through it cleanly. But Arnoldus just has been able to sort of reformat himself perfectly and is managing this gap to absolute perfection through turn 3. He pushes wide, puts a couple tires on the grass, as well as the 4 of Harley Lewis does the same. Through turn 4, in towards turn 5, now up towards turn 6. This is where Martin had that problem with the lap traffic. Track is more than clear at this point. Maybe a little wide at the apex for Martin, but Lewis doesn't seem much quicker off of it as well.
There's nobody who's better at holding off Pro Mazda cars than Arnoldus. But can he get it done over these next 2.5 laps? Here he is. Let's watch him through the middle sector as Lewis hunts him down here with a couple to go.
So through the long left at 10, in towards 11. A little bit of a wiggle for Arnoldus. That's going to favor the 4 of Harley Lewis. So we'll have a run in towards turn 12. You can't make the move here, though, and he's done it. And Harley Lewis is collected as well.
Huge incident. Both your leaders taken out. Fabio Berchtold makes his way through. And he is your leader. Let's ride on board with our Nordis. That car already looks damaged there from the onboard view. And then he is pushing a little bit too hard here through this final quarter. That steering's bent already.
Yeah, steering slightly bent. And then you know what? That's actually very similar to the Rosenquist incident as well. Felix at turn 1 goes into in the IndyCar race, just was too hot. We'll see this from Harley Lewis's perspective now. Very similar incident. Bent steering, just turned in a little bit too early, clips the curb, and thrown into the outside wall. And you're going to see Harley, really nothing he can ever do here, Johnny.
Harley Lewis is sitting duck for sure. He's going to head through the next right-hander, and we'll have a look at him. Oh, this is nothing you can do. Wrong place, wrong time. That car's damaged. Into the wall, of course, as well. And Berchtold, one more Stephen Bradbury moment for you. Why not? The number 7 there of Fabio Berchtold. Started 6th. Into the lead. Can he keep it together? Because, Randy, I'm not going to say he's won this race. I'm going to say, can he keep it together for these next 1.5 laps?
I have a feeling he's got a nice big buffer. He sort of has sat out there on his own the entire race. We've not talked about the TNT driver whatsoever. He's got an 11-second gap to Carl Crowley, who's in second. And then Oldest Putekelis, after popping a motor, has gotten his way onto the podium. So well done by the driver of the 666. Sort of everything continues to go right for him as our race leader now screams down the front straightaway for the penultimate time. A white flag at the starter stand right here, right now. So for Fabio, he's just got to cruise around for a couple more miles, and he's got this in the bag.
Final lap, white flag waves. Berchtold makes it through the turn 2 bump. And he's looking towards a memorable race victory. Which one do you think, which race is a bit better, Randy? Today's or last week's?
I think this one was a lot more drama-filled in terms of I think there was more attrition last week, but the attrition that we had this week was, I think, a lot more impactful because it tended to affect the leaders. So I would say if I had to pick of the two, the doubleheaders, which was more enjoyable, I'd say this one. And I think Fabio Berchtold would probably mimic that as well.
I'm not going to say slow and steady wins the race, but I'm going to say medium and steady wins the race. He kept it together. He's still quicker than all the other drivers behind him for sure. And you'll head through the middle sector for the last time in this race, and you should take a valiant victory for sure, Fabio Berchtold. For Putekelis and Crowley, a good podium for them, of course, too, Randy, if they can get it done. But Berchtold, what an event.
Yeah, for him, I mean, he's just sat there in that podium spot with some of the attrition that we've had, and he's just quietly sat there, not made any mistakes, and that's opened up a fantastic opportunity for him that he perfectly took advantage of.
Fabio Berchtold, your winner for round 7 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. He takes victory, a valiant victory around the streets of Belle Isle, and he enjoys it there. Fabio Berchtold is victor. Who's going to come across the line in second? Putekelis, there he is on screen. Looks like he's going to perform.
He got all the way up to second.
All the way up to second on that brilliant recovery drive, of course. You have a quick Oldest Putekelis who could have won this race had things gone right, and we could say that for, well, pretty much most of these drivers throughout the field.
Carl Crowley? He's lost about 14 seconds on that last lap.
There could be fuel issues possibly for Carl Crowley.
I see damage on that left front end plate.
Oh, no. So he's definitely lost Carl Crowley, 1 minute 40 on that penultimate lap. He's ended up on the podium officially, so he's come across the line, but the last lap was quick, Randy. I think it might have been the penultimate lap where he lost a lot of time.
It may have. I'm trying to just to sort of see. Well, I know the Oldest wasn't particularly close. I see the lap car behind that our race leader had some trouble with, and Carl sort of already has the damage. See, his Oldest already passed here. Yeah, he is. So this actually may have happened the lap previous, so we just didn't catch it.
Well, we'll try and find it. Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll see. Oh, there it is. I was about to say, let's stop watching this, but it just happened. Well, a clumsy spin, I guess, is the problem.
So unfortunate there. It would have been a TNT 1-2 there, but unfortunate for Carl. Just catches that curb, but, well, after that, he loses that second spot, but I think now it's time for us to do a buzz down of our finishing results.
Yeah, and we probably switched off that replay for everything good for Kyle Crowley there. I don't think he wanted to be seen after that, but ends up with a podium nevertheless. Let's have a look at your final race results. Fabio Berchtold, you think he's going to remember this race for quite a while? I think so. Victor around Belle Isle for round 7 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. Aldous Particulus recovered from what ridiculously was a blown engine on that first lap, comes home in the 2nd position. Kyle Crowley with that late spin, still on the podium nevertheless, and should still celebrate a 3rd finish result. Yeah, 3rd place finish result here, I should say. Steve Cube in the 4th position, just ahead of Nyok Khan Yuen in the 5th position. Daniel Fletcher generally was the quickest drive here last week. Struggled here today for some reason and ended up in the 6th position after some early troubles. Pete Tinkler and Scott Kirshner, of course, as well, end up in 7th and 8th. We know what happened to Scott Kirshner through the final sector. Some damage cost him a lot of time as he had to make a pit stop to repair his Pro Mazda vehicle. Anthony Rice came home in 9th. He could have been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, potentially taking out Martin Arnoldas, your race victor. But Arnoldas had some damage from that and ended up taking out himself. He was a DNF in the 10th position, and it also took out Harley Lewis, you can see on screen. One of those two were expecting to win this race. They're not even in your top 9 and the final race results. Kurt Van Wagenen missed the start, comes back 2 laps behind to finish this race, and Ollie Peacock, your pole position sitter, last driver unclassified in this event. So, Randy, any final comments on this race today? It was a brilliant one, of course, in terms of drama, but next time out, we head to Road America in just a couple of weeks' time. Still some confirmation on that event, of course, as well, but it'll be 14 laps around Road America. So first of all, your comments on this event, and then the challenges of Road America coming up, an entirely different circuit.
I mean, this race was, I think it was just more street racing drama. It just happened later in the race than what we saw last time out, just 7 days ago here, where we saw sort of all the drama in the opening handful of laps. This time, the sort of opening handful of laps, 12 laps really, were kind of calm, and then it all kicked off. Road America is going to be a really fun race, because I always talk about the fact that these sort of lower-tiered, lower-powered single-seaters are always just a blast to watch on the big GP-style tracks, and Road America is, I think, one of the best examples of that, because it's just going to be like Daytona for these guys. You're going to see them running from turn down that long front straightaway, and, of course, going up the hill, just going to be full of slipstreaming. You're going to get a little bit of a draft, of course, going into turn 3, on the run into turn 5. You have the run out of the carousel and then into the kink that you're going to, potentially might see some passing opportunities. Then the run in towards Canada Corner. Road America, I think of most of the American racetracks that there are, is probably the pure example of pure raciness that these guys are going to have to work with. And it's going to be a crazy, crazy show for all of them.
100%. That is it for our broadcast here today. Don't forget, of course, as well, that next race, just keep in the loop, of course, as well. It will be on RaceSpotTV. Check the website for more information. Check social media, of course, as well, our platforms, for more information on the confirmation of that event. But it will be at Road America on the 22nd of June for 14 laps of racing action. That's just in a fortnight's time. That will be round 8 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. It will also be on your beloved RaceSpotTV. Thanks to all you viewers joining us for today's broadcast. You've been brilliant as always, of course, as well. Good to see a lot more comments out there, of course, as well on the YouTube stream too. I'm Jonathan Simon in the commentary booth, joined by Randy Cheneth, of course, who's worked the cameras for us as well. Thanks to Istvan Bello for his work in terms of track camera positioning from trackcams22.com, of course, as well. Thanks to our other partners, Andreas Werner, Simon Grossman, Nick Thiessen, for their work as well behind the scenes, of course, because this has been a RaceSpotTV presentation broadcasted today on YouTube. We will say so long from Belle Isle. We'll hopefully see you shortly in a couple weeks' time at Road America.